Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, and excited to speak with you all today, and hopefully share some thoughts during this presentation that get your hearts pumping and you thinking about how you're going to move forward from Arts Center and out into the world to start affecting so many opportunities that we have in front of us. So looking forward to the discussion. I'll jump right in. The topic will unfold here, but I think it really correlates with all the things that I've learned over the years, coming out of Art Center as a designer, moving into the digital and interaction space right away, with a lot of the tools that I needed, but also there were so many more to learn that I was surprised. The first thing I want to do is have us think about where we're at right now. You know, we're sort of at this really interesting inflection point, and I've seen a few over the course of my career, but we're at a big one right now. And what's so interesting about it is that it is a time of concern for many. You know, we've had so many inventions over the years, and human inventions have oftentimes caused worry and skepticism. But I feel that AI is distinctly massive technology evolution. Certainly in my lifetime, and so far in yours, and I'm sure even generation before mine. Um, but these pictures that I have up here right now are kind of interesting, right? They are for me reeking of opportunity. From my perspective, our sort of current state in terms of where designers have the ability to have influence and effect on what the future, how the future unfolds, is as evergreen as it ever was. So two out of these three images should look pretty familiar, right? One we use all day long, every day already, right? And the other is sort of I've been humorous, humorously thrilled by how basic it is. But the ad campaign that ChatGPT put out um, is really indicative of a moment. On one hand, they're super inspiring by the power that lies beneath them, and on the other, they're kind of ridiculous, and don't really portray a really interesting scenario that we know is coming. And so, to me, again, this is all opportunity. The image in the middle there is a command prompt, right? It's 50 years old. They all look kind of the same, right? Lots of words. Um, and I feel that we're still, especially with today's most ubiquitous AI use through chatbots, we're in the equivalent of this pre-GUI or graphical user interface era with this technology. And oftentimes, history will show like when new things launch, they're really basic and simple and full of constraints and challenges, and quickly unveil all their strength. AI is again absolutely gonna change the world around us for the rest of our lives. But most important to me is that's not what we're seeing right now. Isn't even close to what the future is, right? Um, and the question is, especially for all of us, is how are we going to shape it? That's the power that we have. And what I want to talk to you about today are some of the different ways that my experience has shown to be effective. Shaping the future really requires a multi-prong and holistic approach, right? It it goes well beyond the craft that we all savor and get really good at and continue to hone our skills around. It goes beyond even the problem solving, which I think Art Center has taught you more and more and more to be an outstanding problem solver, to think holistically and to think big. And it goes beyond some level of serendipity, right? Being able to shape and change the world around us in any form of design. I think all of us that have had careers full of great serendipity and missed opportunities, there's a lot of that involved. But really, to move into building the bridges that I think are necessary to affect the future, you got to lean into discomfort, friction, and most importantly, you're going to learn a whole bunch of things that you never thought you'd learn. Um, and so there's sort of four categories that I think, based on my experience, are important in terms of how we can bridge the world around us and our processes and the way we work with other teams. So we'll look at those four through the talk today with some examples that I'll show you from some of my past work. The first category is about paradigm shifts, right? We're in one right now. I've experienced the mobile paradigm shift, the internet paradigm shift, and each time a whole lot changes in the world around us. And very quickly, you can't imagine it being how it used to be. And this is human evolution, right? We go way back to like the you know all the different transitions through time from hunter gatherer to agriculture and so on and so forth, all the way to today. Humans move through these shifts, but how do we bridge them? How do we look past the challenges of the moment and move into the future and bridge what's coming with where we're at? I think is a really important skill that designers can bring to the table. Another big area of bridging is the disciplines, the multi-disciplines that it takes. Co-creation is something I'll probably talk about a few times today, but that is how problems get solved. That is how great design meets the world. There's also especially in the work that I've done throughout my career, which lives in the balance between the future and right now. There's this tension and opportunity to always be bridging the vision that you're forming, the concepts you're developing, the prototypes you're building that articulate possibility and tie those to the execution side, making strategies tangible. Is really important, and it is always good to be able to dip between shipping products and dreaming up the next one, so that you don't lose sight of those critical elements. And then lastly, mainly this will be a forum for discussion, because I really am curious to learn from you and how you're navigating this currently. But really, that bridge between human creativity and AI capability, that'll continue to shift too, especially if we move towards through agentic into general artificial intelligence and other things. That will ever be another sort of evergreen topic of discussion. But those are the categories for which we will move through some examples. First, we'll talk about the paradigm shift that is the past and the future. One thing that I've always noticed is that businesses really move through a period during a paradigm shift where focus is bifurcated, right? They're thinking about their existing strategies that were underway that are suddenly to be brought into question, right? Their businesses have roadmaps, they have multi-year plans, they have visions, they have all these things, but so many of these paradigm shifts seem to still come out of left field. They still seem to cause disruption, even with the best organizations, with the most sort of solid approach to product development and R&D. And so when this bifurcation happens, oftentimes things that are happening within the R&D space are put on hold, teams are reassigned, people are laid off because their projects get stopped and they need to rethink the kind of skill set that they need. And so there's a lot of disruption. But at the same time, this disruption and this bifurcation does allow for opportunity. And the big opportunity that I think designers have is to be a steady voice of reason, a user advocate, and to be able to help um, imagine what comes next. Um, so I've worked with Spotify over in my team for many years, off and on over the last 12 years, and as we all know, Spotify has evolved significantly. Came on the scene a long time ago, right? Around 2006, I think they launched and became known very quickly as a streaming service that was the alternative to what most people were doing at the time, which was pirating music. And what was interesting is that they worked to change the concept of access uh, um, from ownership. Right? We people used to have records and then cassette tapes and then CDs, and it was all about what was in your library. All of a sudden, Spotify said, "Look, let's see if the time is right for something different." And so, as they came on the scene, really, what their killer app was, it was a super simple thing, and not sure if how many of you remember this. Probably only a few of us, but the first time you jumped in and used Spotify, what was so novel is you could literally search any song or album that you could think of, and it's probably there, and you could listen to it, and you could listen to it for free at first. And that was pretty amazing, right? That was a pretty big shift. And so they were working on paradigm shifts. And as they started to look ahead, there were a lot of new technologies coming on board, right? The mobile was entering the scene, and the definition of what mobile computing would be was completely upending the simple approach that they had at the time, which you can kind of see here in this image. When we got involved with them in 2014, we were pulled into a project called Holistic, and Holistic was kickstarted to think big and to develop a multi-year process and roadmap for the possibilities for Spotify's big ambitions to not only be a trendsetter around the streaming services, but to expand and extend as far and as wide as they could to be relevant in all the different aspects of life. So one of the first things we did was sit down and spend a lot of time. It was a small, very high caliber team, and we spent a lot of time together working through the possibilities. Today, all the different touch points that we have for our digital lives and services are super accessible, right? We take them all for granted. When we sat down and looked at it, we're like, look, the possibilities are super wide. Today's touch points at that point in time that Spotify had were just a subset of all the possibilities. And so we worked through user journeys and spent a lot of time thinking through the ways that we could expand their ecosystem to be relevant and integrated into every aspect and every possible touch point in your life. And then what would that mean? Which ones were appropriate? Which ones would work? Which ones wouldn't? And where could we start moving today? And so these involved everything from travel and cars to working out to wearables like watches. And so, again, a lot of this all sounds like, yeah, that's how we live. That's really normal. Well, it sure wasn't in 20, and even in 2014, right? It was not, it was a glimmer in the eye. And so what we wanted to do was codify how that could work, and get the business side to start to see that these possibilities were many and that the pathways to them could come over time. A lot of what we did was thinking through models, scenarios, various mental models for the evolution of Spotify's approach into the mobile space. We had a lot of thoughts around the data that we could be gathering. The sort of notion that we called that, we're in this together, but the Spotify's stream and your preferences working together to sort of evolve what your playlists look like and what music listening could be. Much different, sort of an interactive, super smart, artificially intelligent radio kind of experience, if you will, is how I remember we were thinking about that. And so the effort again went on for many years. So thinking through what the right deliverables were to help bring the business around. Oftentimes it was just thinking and structure and frameworks, and other times it was rapid prototypes and illustrations of the ideas. It really depended on the audiences that we were working with. But some of that involved high sort of conceptual motion graphic based illustrations of new ways to think through what the experiences could look like. Again, mobile was a pretty fresh solution for them, and we were really thinking about how that could evolve. And another really valuable area that we leaned into was this idea of building out the ecosystem, not through one-offs and all their own efforts, but really through partnership and collaboration, and sort of expanding their network of influence to involve the stalwarts across some of these other industries that were coming to play with their own ideas and scenarios, and see where overlap could lie. So we spent quite a bit of time conceiving what different partnerships might look like to expand and extend and add value across some of the ecosystem ideas that we were having. These included things like companies like Delta and Uber and Airbnb, and some of those didn't work. We learned from we didn't implement these ideas necessarily. We helped influence, but I think we were always learning along the way since we were involved for so many years with them. But things like Uber, right? The Uber, there was a relationship launched with Uber, and if you got in the car, you could go through some exercises and challenges, hurdles, if you will, to try and connect to the car that you're riding in and put your music up there, and some of the technical complexities of that, it just didn't always work that well. The other issue that came up was driver environment. The driver did not love that experience. They would do a 10-minute ride, a 30-minute ride, a 5-minute ride, and to have their environment constantly evolving and changing wasn't great. And so there was a user experience misalignment. But the learning from that, helped drive more effective solutions like with Delta Airlines and even Starbucks, which was, I think, a much more effective partnership in terms of adding ambiance and culture building into to their environments. And so, yeah, the work there was I think valuable because it was not only bridging where things could go, but how those bridges could form. We were trying to not only think about solutions, but avenues to execute on them, and even can we help inspire some of these potential partners to get involved and engaged. So over the years, this work was extremely expansive. We were constantly generative and able to adapt and respond to the changing environment, and ultimately put together a body of work and thinking in partnership with the holistic team at Spotify that became a playbook really for that organization and for many of the different businesses that continue to unfold. You know, the work spawned things like Discover Weekly, some of those partnerships I talked about, and most importantly, some different processes and ways that they worked. So a lot there. Again, you know, the challenge in this sort of paradigm shift world is that prediction is never possible and never the goal. The attempt is to shape, affect, and hopefully help excite about the possibilities. There's a lot of doom and gloom versions of future, and I think one of the things we've always taken to heart was creating as exciting and hopeful of a view of where the possibilities lie. The next topic here is the connection across disciplines, right? It's cross discipline and cross organizational collaboration is absolutely critical to success. Nothing really in the world that we're living in today, and certainly moving forward, is going to get shipped and delivered if it's in the product space, especially in the interaction space, that isn't going to require working across disciplines. And this really applies beyond just business and technology, but any disciplines, right? Marketing, sales. I think anyone that's involved in the ecosystem of a product is a tremendous source of value and worthy of being heavily involved in the product development and product conceptualization. I think designers are really ultimately outstanding advocates, right? As user advocates, we have the ability to bring that lens to every conversation, to level set the development of principles, the understanding of business objectives, the usability of certain technologies, and so on and so forth, with always the grounding notion that users lie in the middle. If this is good for people and humans and who are going to use this, then let's keep talking. Otherwise, let's reorient and redirect back to that. There's very few projects that designers will work on that won't have an end user in the mix somewhere. And that's where I think our connective tissue, or our ability to create connective tissue, really is of high value. And every good and challenging project ultimately comes together and sees the light of day because of deep and highly valuable collaborations. Unless you're an artist working for yourself, there's very few challenges that designers are going to face that don't require deep collaboration. With sort of moving now back and using the Spotify case studies here throughout, but moving back to Spotify, during that holistic work, one of the areas that we identified as a possibility was the concept of not only digital connectivity and digital connection to users and all the touch points of their lives, but also real life, um, live events, and the opportunity to bring people together through music in venues and concerts and things like that. And um, we unearthed some of this work and were brought back in not that long ago. This was probably about 3 years ago to sort of come back to that notion and help develop some ideas. And a lot of what we needed to do there in terms of understanding the business and the technology was dig much deeper. This moved quickly beyond just an idea into, okay, well, is it plausible? Is it plausible from a technology perspective? What kinds of data do we have? Our thesis was, look, listening data is geographically bound. We know who's listening to what, where, and when, and that's got to be of great value to promoters and venue owners and artists themselves who might want to plan a tour. And if they had access to that information, they might be able to fill more rooms and more venues along the way. And so we needed to understand, the technical capabilities and the viability, but also then the business infrastructure that surrounds that, and what were the market forces driving it. And obviously, we didn't need to become experts in any of these spaces, but we needed to become very conversant and inquisitive in order to help pitch this idea. Our objective with the work was to basically produce a pitch deck for this internal team to go to the board and the CEO and see if this would fly, and see if they could convince them that the idea was there. And so it began with lots and lots of detailed user experience studies. It didn't begin there. Actually, it followed a lot of the research and learning work that we were doing. But really, the bulk of what we did was build a sample solution that was detailed and in depth enough to help all sides, to help the technology side of the business feel that it was that there was viability to this, that the data that we felt that we could gather was aligned to the data being gathered, or being developed within the organization. And then, it was the business, was the potential revenue model in place, was there enough understanding of the market forces and the different competitors in the space, and how could this differentiate? Ultimately, this work required these translation skills and his ability to bridge the different disciplines, work in tight teams, and develop these different kinds of deliverables, from highly technical to product prototypes to sales materials, basically, to go and excite the board about the possibility. And a lot of what we learned there was that different teams have a different mindset around innovation and concept development. To some, it's a distraction. Shipping product teams find it can be annoying and almost highly distracting to the work that needs to get done to get the product out the door. But we've also learned over the years that involving them in the right ways, at the right times, they can take ownership and become a part of the envisioning process without having to be overly distracted by it. And this can really lead to a sense of ownership and pride, even if they're just involved in certain ideation or brainstorming sessions or product deep research into existing products. And so that we've always found is a really critical element, is engage each discipline at different points in your process and find where and how to plug them in ways that work for them. And that requires a certain level of multilingual work, and designers really have the opportunity to be that translator, to be that connective tissue between these different disciplines. You got to learn how to speak user, speak business, speak technology. And most importantly, you really can't wait. Throughout my career, so much of this was, developing these processes as I went, that there was never waiting to be invited to the strategic conversations. It was understanding the problem space enough and the constituents involved, and networking across organization and across disciplines to the degree where you have earned your seat and you arrive at the table ready to roll up your sleeves and work on their problems and identify how it can solve that understanding, and that collaboration can solve a broader, more holistic problem. The third and sort of the last topic that I'm going to share some work around here is finding that bridge between vision and execution. It really correlates to what we've just been talking about, because at the end of the day, every good vision really has to find its way to having effect. It's not a premonition or a prediction of the future. It's really a set of hypotheses that are to be tested, to be trialed, to be pushed back on, some of them thrown out, and others to sort of spring forth and add value over time. But really, at the end of the day, finding that important balance, knowing when to move out of what if and why not, and back into how do we implement and execute something right now, a version one, first step along the path that we can learn enough from to form new hypotheses or answer questions to earlier hypotheses. And so being able to move back and forth between vision and execution is critical, and ultimately will help also with your validity and value as a team member, whether you're working on the execution product closer to product shipping side, or on a concept development, more R&D focused team. Moving back and forth between the two and working closely with the different constituents is going to be hugely valuable. One of the sort of continued efforts that was part of the Spotify Live work required that, right? Once the heads nodding in the boardroom led to, okay, let's go further, let's do this. We had to go much deeper into the problem space. It wasn't really, the selling was done, and then we needed to move into identifying what we needed to create and solve to bring it to life. Hypotheses around the value for different users needed to turn into the right artifacts to prove or disprove those hypotheses. And to do so, oftentimes means building something. Nowadays with vibe coding and whatnot, we can really get really close to building the solution very rapidly, and test these hypotheses with real users against real technology and in real world situations. Obviously, if you're unrolling a major effort like live events, that becomes a little trickier. But to the degree we could, that's sort of the route we went down with this effort. So deep deep levels of much deeper understanding of the different users in the ecosystem, the artists, venue owners, promoters, parts, fans. We all understand what it means to buy a ticket to a live event, but we don't really think that much about what goes into that, creating that. Sure, we kind of understand like the insane levels of technology and the show itself, that in and of itself is enormous, but all the logistics involved in making it happen and the predictive work done to identify the date, the time, the space, and all that, and at the end of the day, the goal is fill the venue, make it valuable, make it work for everyone. And so a lot of work went into developing tools for these different audiences that we were working with, and those tools really needed to go um, back into a form of inspire and drive the concept home for the different constituents, but also become very, very plausible and very real to the degree it required for the different users in the system that we were learning from and talking to. And this ultimately helped land that the foray into the live space. Right now on Spotify, there's a relationship with Ticketmaster. So there's just an early glimpse at how it's working at the moment, and that very sort of behind the scenes work that fans don't see is very much in effect, and also the evolution of how this leads to other strategic investments and possibilities is continuing to unfold. It's all relatively new right now, but that sort of success story would never have been possible without the ability to bridge between the conceptual side and continue to add value to the team all the way down to the execution and detail oriented side. So really, at the end of the day, your job is to make this, future feel inevitable and desirable, but it's not just concepts. It's got to land as plausible, executable strategies that, again, back to the cross-discipline work, you can only get to the execution side in a respectable and authentic way by working very closely with to understand who your audience is, and to pull this work together so that it moves from the hopeful dreams into, yeah, here's the nooks and crannies and the details of what we're building. The last topic is one that I really want to hold as more of a discussion to the extent we can in this venue, because I'm super passionate about it, but also super curious to continue learning from others in terms of how we navigate the bridge between the human element and artificial intelligence. In today's world, it's not that complicated. I think as we look forward, as mentioned earlier, through general intelligence and things like that, if they are to come to fruition in the way that many technologists predict they will, that will be a much deeper conversation. But as we sort of navigate this space in front of us, I think that in my mind, the beauty of artificial intelligence in its current form is that it can, if we use it well and correctly across both how we work and all the processes that we leverage in terms of our tool sets, but also how we present and create solutions for others. There's an opportunity to get very smart very quickly and much smarter. So what I'm trying to always avoid at this point in time is yes, it's a productivity boost. Yes, it can do a lot of things in a very short amount of time that could take a lot more energy and brain power and time to produce. So you can kind of think of it as I'm going to hand that off and it's all done. But if you really exercise the learning element, you can stay super inquisitive. You can make sure that you're asking and prompting in the right way to make sure that you're learning why was this put together, why is this the best solution to that problem I'm looking to solve. Walk me through the logic that you used AI to put this solution together. And so the opportunity, I think, continues to be, if you seize it, to become smarter and smarter and not just lazier and lazier, which I think is an easy road to go down when there's great tools available to take care of lots of work that's on your plate. But I think it's going to be important for us. So what I'm curious about here is how you're going to leverage AI to make you more human. How are you guys using it today? How does it, how has it affected learning? We were just talking about. Really importantly, how are you innovating with what it looks like in the solutions, not just how it's making you more effective and productive, but how is it integrating into tools that you're building, conceiving, thinking through in ways that are novel and sort of back to the beginning, really rethinking how the user experience around AI will evolve. We all know it's not the chatbot is not the future. What's the interface and operating system for agents? What is the future of generative UI, which is already being explored, and there's some really neat things out there already on that space. But really, it's just the tip of the iceberg, and there's a lot of opportunity for solution development. But I'm also curious, sort of, where you're excited and concerned, and would love to just open it up to questions and discussion at this point, especially around that topic.